nice. And he is a great guy. Now he's a governor. It'd be nice to be able to give him a call, right? They get 100, 300 appearance requests a week and thousands of calls every week, so they can't take them all. So you'd like to be the people that have the people that grow into roles of leadership. So I'll take her call. Be glad to talk. You're going to have to answer after I retire anyway, which is you have a limited amount of tax revenue. What are you going to do with it? Picture that all the taxes in the state of Minnesota, about $48 billion every 2 years. It's like a wheelbarrow full of money. That's all there is. It's only $48 billion. It's a big wheelbarrow. You have to go around to transportation and to higher education and to public safety and to state government and health and human services, all the different departments, and take some of that money out of that wheelbarrow. And you might not agree. You might say, no, we must put more money into transportation. Forget higher education. But those choices are especially acute in Minnesota because we require a balanced budget. So as you look at the higher education dilemma, really, for students, because you want to go to school, right? That's our great equalizer, but you don't end up owing $500 billion. The state is the first stop to say to the state, you must fund higher education. When you get there, remember that the next question will be, okay, we can put another $2 billion into higher education. This is great, Mr. Straka. What do you want us to put $2 billion less into? And you'll have those lobbyists sitting outside your office 10 seconds later waiting for an hour to talk to you for 5 minutes. And they're going to say, did you just cut health and human services and health care for the poor by $2 billion? Because that's what they're saying down the hall. And so these decisions require you as future leaders to say not just what you would like more of, or what I'm with you on higher ed, but also to answer the question of where's that money coming from. If you're not going to cut it from another part of the budget, are you going to raise taxes? I come from a family of math teachers, but I don't really have their gift for it, but I can tell you this. If you're not going to raise taxes and you're not going to cut it from the budget's got to balance, well, then you ain't getting any increase in higher education funding. It's just a mathematical certainty. So keep that in mind. The state has many different voices, and we have Paul Anderson, who's the senator from Wayzata, who serves as the chair of the Higher Education Committee, and I encourage you all to email and just say, hey, Paul, Nick said it would be okay to send you an email. How about we jack up some state support for higher education? I'm a proud as hell maverick, and I would really freaking appreciate it. Okay. A couple other things. We want infrastructure for all our campuses. This largely relates to the question of bonding. So you'll, if you want, be able to go online. The House of Representatives has their bonding tour in town today, actually. And Minnesota State has some projects out there. Bonding is a borrowing account. So picture you get out of school and you got a great career and you're proud of your Maverick education, you're making good money. You might want a car or a house. You're going to borrow that money. You're not going to write that check for the house or the car. You're going to borrow it. Interest rate, how much did you pay for the car? It's the same with bonding. If we want to do something on Armstrong Hall, we do. $90 million. That's for the next generation of Mavericks. Well, we're going to borrow $90 million. Okay, that means over the next few years, the state is going to have to pay that back, instead of do something with that money that we might have wanted to do going back to tuition or transportation, whatever it is. Infrastructure is underserved in the state of Minnesota, and we're behind, wait for it, about $1 billion. Minnesota Management and Budget runs the bonding effort. This is run by a very talented, outstanding commissioner named Myron Franz, and he will tell you we are behind on the maintenance we need right now. Picture the roof at South Central College in North Mankato. If it's leaking and you should have fixed it and you haven't, that's behind. It's not a new project that might be cool. It's something you already should have done that you did. We're $1 billion behind. Why do I tell you that? Because in the Senate, the last time we had the bonding argument, which went until about 3 in the morning, we had members of the Senate who said, I will not support a bonding bill over $850 million. And some of us were like, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm not going to support it. I don't care what it's going for. I'm not going over $850. And respect to understand that there's a conservative financial mentality that says, how about no money? You know, I got by on no money, you guys can buy on no money. You have to understand why these are investments that you're making, not just to make your campus better, but the whole state, and not just higher ed, but lots of stuff, roads and bridges. Your generation is going to hear a lot about water infrastructure. With the increase in population and the things that we do statewide, both in the metro and farming, we've got water and cleanliness issues. We got mining issues. We got climate change issues, all that. How am I doing? Good. Thank you for that. There's a lot more I could say about what I'm working on locally. I don't think it would be that entertaining. I serve on the Transportation Committee in the Senate. I serve on the Long-Term Care and Aging Committee. I'm a proud member of the Senate Agricultural Finance Committee. You might have noticed 98% of our acres in southern Minnesota are farms, and they're having a tough time. A lot of these families have been on this land 150 years. So those are the things that I do, and you're welcome to contact me. I was going to pass these around. I went to McAllister, if you've ever heard of it, speech communications major. They said if you brought stuff to read, don't pass it out till the end. And if you do, at the beginning, everyone's going to be reading it instead of listening to you. And I can see already that I'm not only terrible at math in general, but I do not have enough brochures. The point is, my contact information is on there. And I guess the last thing I'd leave you with, in addition to, you go to a great school and enjoy it, and we're going to take a bunch of tough questions, is you are just the group that America is trying to reach right now. I mean, we talk to a lot of college students, and they say, well, when's our time to lead? And when are we going to be in charge? You're in charge right now. The fastest growing group of voter participation is your age group. Went from 23% to 41% in one election cycle. And so you're in charge now. Manage it. Enjoy it. Find your own path. You don't have to serve an elected office. You can work on campaigns while you figure out what you want to do. You don't have to work every election cycle. You might not find a candidate. Make them earn your help. But at the end of the day, you got to vote. And the reason is very simple. If you do not vote, then you just decreased your vote to 0. And you just increased the share of everyone else's vote. But everyone else might not agree with you. So you may have just increased the power of someone voting who you really don't agree with. And that makes no sense at all. Plus, it's kind of cool to vote. Go behind the curtain, get ready to flip the lever, and everyone says, hey, for that 1 second, everyone wants to know what I think, even though it's secret ballot. Good? Okay. So now I promised I would take questions. Madam President.
Yeah, so does anybody have questions? You can just raise your placard. This is a great opportunity to ask them. Senator Hoysett.
Hi, thanks so much for coming, Nick. Appreciate it. The question I have is, you're talking about budgeting, and it's such an interesting and complex topic. And I'm serving on the student allocations committee, and it's really hard to decide. The money has to come from somewhere, and someone is going to end up being shortchanged. So when you're doing that, what do you think for the state? Where are cuts that you see that you would want to be made?
All right, great question. There's some reason people voted for you, right? I don't know what it is. You got some platform, you did something or said something, or you stand for something, or you're going to vote for something, you're going to vote against something, right? Some reason you got voted. Those voters said your priorities, what you stand for, is what I want. Or the man or woman that you ran against is definitely what I don't want. So you have to make those calls. That is why you're there. If you think higher is a higher priority than transportation, you got to vote. So that's just what you're there for. We were just talking about the city councils here, Mankato and North Mankato, and they're kind of cool. But they hate having to say no. And it is cool to serve, and I love it. I hope I never stop. But you have to do the hard part of your job. It's just like any job you're ever going to get. Every job has stuff you don't like. And those priorities, it's fun to say, yay, higher education, until the transportation people call it. And you have to do it. And not only that, but people will respect a clear message on why those are your priorities. And I'm telling you, do not tiptoe around those votes as senators. Say why you think that's your vote, vote it, and stand by it. That's another thing people want. What politicians do, they get them in trouble sometimes, is say, of course I'm for that. Well, I've always been against that. Everyone knows I'm for it or against it. This is or is not a problem, which I may or may not solve for you. And then everyone's kind of like, he didn't say anything. I hate it. Even more than I thought I would. So you have to make that decision. And for student allocation, those issues, you're students. What is it? Did they win your vote? Don't be afraid to listen or change your vote, too. Maybe you think you're yes on some appropriation or allocation, and somebody comes and says, yeah, did you know they do this with it? Like, no way, I didn't know that. Now I'm a no. And don't be afraid to change your mind, although the more you change your mind, the more it suggests you didn't do your homework in the first place, which starts to raise the question whether you're going to be the ex-senator someday, because people that put you in these positions of power and authority have a right to expect that you'll do your best. And if you don't, and you're unprepared all the time, I can tell you that we have colleagues up at the state legislature where I'm like, dude, you did not even read the sheet we get. These bills are 800 pages long to get 3 sheets of summary. Dude, you did not even read the summary. And then they get emails from people saying, hey, I watched the tape of you on the Senate floor, and it looked like you didn't read the summary. So that was my long-winded way of saying that's exactly what you're doing here. And people will respect your opinion if you make it clear why it is. Well, that's all the questions. No, I'm just kidding.
Are there any other questions, comments? Any other questions?
You have to say it 3 times.
Yeah, I'm really hanging out there for somebody else to ask a question, such as Senator Spursel. Thank you.
So kind of bouncing off of what Senator Lisa said. So what are some areas that you personally want to see cuts in order to make room for these higher education goals that we're at?
I trapped you. So if you didn't hear, the question was, what do I want to cut in order to provide for greater higher education funding? Can I use an example? Nothing. We have had tax cuts that make rich people richer, and it's crazy. I mean, if you want to run a company, would you say, well, we're just going to have the 3 men and women that make the most make way more, and then our company's going to prosper? Of course not. So we just provided, at the federal level in December 2017, about 80% of the tax cuts to the richest 1% of Americans. And I just want to throw this out there. Sorry, I didn't mean to trick you, but that's exactly the question I want, which is I do not want to cut anything. I want to fund higher education. In December 2017, the stock market is at an all-time high. Corporate profits are at an all-time high. With me? So that's the time we got to cut taxes for corporations? Exactly. And so we're in this budget deficit. I don't even want to talk about the federal debt, which is up $1 trillion each of the last 2 years, which, joke's on you, you really are going to be paying that one. So when you cut taxes, you get a bit of a sugar high, right? You get greater job growth, greater pay for short term. But now you owe all that money. If you remember, we were talking at the federal level about how these tax cuts would pay for themselves. Now we're $1 trillion behind. It's the same at the state level, and I would guess it's the same with the student budget, which is if you're going to make a cut, what benefit is it? And I say with the personal tax income of the state of Minnesota, which is kind of in the high half of the country, and with the federal budget, we got plenty of rich people. We don't need any more rich people. I'm a lawyer. We have rich lawyers out there. They're good men and women. That's just fine. That's not the group we got to help next. We will build a better economy, a more broad-based economy, by helping those working men and women at the beginning. And the tax policy of the country, you know, I mean, sorry. I don't mean to get so worked up. In other words, how about this? I'll give you this. We'll call it a draw. If I had to cut in the budget, they call tax cuts spending. So we get what's called a fiscal note. So if you say I want to cut corporate taxes 2%, then you get a fiscal note that says that's going to cost the state budget $400 million. That's the spending that I would do. And I think our state has always been a higher than average tax state, and we have prospered repeatedly from having a little bit of a team-first atmosphere. You wouldn't want to work at a company where one side's against the other side. You sure as heck would want to play in a football team where one side's against the other side of the team, and I don't think our state or our country works any better that way. That is what I think. That's the world according to Nick Price.
Thank you.
Which I didn't know that was a thing until earlier this year. Last thing, I hope it goes without saying, if any of you want to stop by the Capitol during the session, I'll give you the VIPest of tours. We'll run all over that place. You can come individually. Sophie, back me up on this.
It's true, 100%.
I mean, that is another thing to keep in mind, which is there's nothing stopping one of you from being the next governor or the governor after that, and then you can call and think of yourself as vertically integrated. No reason you couldn't be governor, no reason your friend couldn't be governor. And then you go up there and say, hey, is Governor Sophie there? Well, yeah, she's got 10,000 calls a week, but you say, well, I serve with the student senate. My way to say hi. So think of yourselves at the highest level. Come up there. We're all in this together. And that's my way of saying, on this has my office email, my chief of staff and all that. You can come up anytime. We are looking for college students to show around and try to impress.
Awesome. Do you have time for a few more questions?
I do. Am I supposed to order that pizza for my other group at 5 o'clock?
You got time.
Okay.
Yes. Senator Calderon pitched forward, and then you can.
For the Clean Energy First Act, it says by 2050. What do you do now to push that into
Okay. So this is my number one signature item as a legislator. I'm lucky as a freshman to be the chief author of the governor's climate change. So right now, we want to send a message to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world that we are going to reduce carbon emissions. And we're going to set a path that allows industry to choose a little bit of how they get there. I'm not saying tomorrow morning we have to be carbon free and you're in a natural gas plant. But I'm saying we have to get there by 2050. If you talk about climate change this way, we got some engineers and some science students in here somewhere, I'm guessing. Okay. If you take the 100 most wickedly smart scientists in the world, from climate change is a hoax to the planet's going to burn up next week, you take the 50 of them, it's bad. It's bad news for us, and I have 4 children, and I'm going to have grandkids, and I don't want to tell them. So you want to be moving now, and you cannot simply let the marketplace move it, because corporate profits are based on quarter by quarter. They have a duty on those corporate boards to serve the shareholders' interest. That's not the same interest as the next generation. And so you want to have, the governor's got a clean car initiative. You may have heard about this 2 weeks ago. We're going to move to electric vehicles. In fact, thanks to my friends at Minnesota State, they hosted Recharge Mankato, which allowed people to get to see electric vehicles. Go invent something that serves electric cars. You'll be so rich so fast. I mean, that's going to reach a tipping point soon. Here's a number. New vehicle sales in Minnesota right now are 1% hybrids and EVs. So it's like this little tiny thing. By 2040, it's going to be a majority. So you're going to see a ton of change in there. Invent a new car handle or headlight or something for electric vehicles. Trust me, this plan's going to work out for you. We have an outstanding automotive engineering program right here at Minnesota State Mankato. We also have to make it a public, to get to your notes, we also have to make it all in it together. So this is a sensitive issue that the mines in northern Minnesota, which mine some of these precious metals that you need for this transition, a lot of men and women work there. So one of the things I'm very sensitive to as a greater Minnesota senator is it's fine for all of us to say, well, we've got to combat climate change and we've got to shut down these mines and we can't pollute the estuary and the rivers and everything. That's fine if your mom or dad's not losing their job out there. And if we're going to have these changes, there's going to be a public cost component, picture 2 cents per kilowatt hour. We're either all in it together on that or we're not. So I think you're going to see some negotiating here, and I'm hoping the governor will lean in, because we didn't even get a hearing for this bill in the Senate, and it passed in the House. You should have seen this climate change hearing in the House of Representatives. So awesome. Packed, all this testimony, legitimate scientific testimony, exchange of ideas, remember diversity, exchange of ideas, and it passed. And it came through the House floor and it passed on the House floor, and the Senate can't even get a hearing for it. That's a top issue for the generation you guys are in. And so we can also do optimization from the co-ops and investor-owned utilities and just say, look, you've got to reduce the use of carbon burning emissions. One of the questions I hope you guys can answer, because we haven't answered yet, is nuclear. So we haven't had any major nuclear disasters in Minnesota, and it is carbon-free, right? You want carbon-free, you're ready to make sacrifices. So the governor's bill allows the question of nuclear to remain unanswered for now. But the 2 nuclear power plants in Minnesota are due to sunset, that means retire, I think 2034 and 2036. So the governor's bill says, let's do this. And by the way, could you figure out the question of nuclear waste and the risk of nuclear meltdown? We have a couple nuclear plants, and if one of them melts down, we got to evacuate the Twin Cities. I don't know if any of you are from the metropolitan area, but that would be bad.
Awesome. Senator Spursel?
So I have another question. This one's a different topic. I'd like to talk about like gun violence and school safety and what we're doing on that issue. I know that the House is trying to move some stuff forward. It seems like it's always getting stuff in the Senate. So what is the Senate going to be doing in this session to move that forward?
I appreciate that. I mean, I will talk to you guys all day. You have to understand one feature which I have shied away from for the moment, but if you're going to listen to diversity of thought, you got to hear what everyone thinks, including me. We have the only divided legislature in the country. So I'm a proud member of the Democrat Party. That's just who I am. My parents are teachers. So I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. The House is controlled by the DFL. They passed gun legislation, including background checks and red flag laws, and they debated it. They went on the floor and had a discussion. They did. It is blocked in the Senate. No hearing of any kind. Senator Limber, who's a guy I like, is the Senate Judiciary Chair, and he refuses to hear it. And part of that comes from the fact that a lot of these, this is the pizza ordering alarm, which I'm going to push stop on it, so you told me that was okay. Part of that is some senators come from districts where the majority of their constituents don't want any gun legislation. That's a legitimate democratic factor. I mean, if I'm from Mankato and nobody in Mankato wants some legislation and I pass it or I vote for it, I'm going to be the ex-senator. So part of that comes from those districts not wanting to have that heard. But I think you'll see the ballot box. That if you're saying what is my plan to get that heard, I think you're going to continue to see voters in the 18 to 29-year-old age group increase their voting participation. And the question will not be for senators, how can I support hearing that bill, but how can I not? Because a year from November, we're going to have an election. And that's what happens in democracy is if you're not hearing and voting for bills people want, they find someone who will. So that there is no acknowledgement by my friends across the aisle in the Republican Party that they will hear those bills next session. Having said that, you have a voice. You see these rallies at the Capitol. And sometimes legislators say in their caucus, which is when you just meet with your party, hey, I am getting killed on these emails from guns. And I'm fully supportive of background checks and red flags. And that so is my caucus. And I think enough emails will cause, especially suburban Republican legislators, to say, hey, what do you think? Maybe give this thing a hearing, and maybe I'll vote for it. This is a whole nother discussion about caucus dynamics and how your party and your service to your own district work together. My feeling is, I'm a Democrat, I like being a Democrat, I represent 80,000 people whether they voted for me or not. And if you don't do it that way, it's not going to work. So that's where we are on guns. And I continue to urge you on all these issues, make your voice heard, you will not be sorry. And go vote. They think they're going to get voted out. They have a funny way of changing it. That's happened on a ton of issues. We used to have an argument in this country about whether or not women should be allowed to vote. I mean, they have little debates. Well, I don't know, maybe they should be allowed to vote, or maybe they should. And eventually the voters said, yeah, women are going to vote. And that has been one of the most productive changes in all of our legislative history. It just came from a bunch of people marching and saying, we're going to do this, and if you don't vote for this, we're going to vote you out. And I don't mean to put these debates on quite the same level, but if you look at our history, we've had a lot of those, and we get through them. And the ballot box is often the final arbiter. Is that fair? Guns, climate change, no pizza order.
Okay, Senator Rouse.
Senator.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm just curious, what's your position on the legalization of recreational marijuana?
I'm for it, but not as excited as some of my Democrat buddies and brothers and sisters. I went to high school in Northern, well, I mean, that's a great question. I went to high school in Northern California. My dad's from Van Brunt Street over here, but was drafted into the Army. It's a long story. My mom's from Los Angeles. They met at UC Berkeley in the late 60s, early 70s. I went to McAllister. I'm very familiar with the pros and cons of recreational marijuana. So I get all that. Having said that, the states that have legalized have seen some issues raised on public health and public safety. So again, like, what job are you doing if you just say, oh yeah, for sure, no question. And I'm ready to have those hearings, and I would vote for it, but it is not a blowout issue in our district. And just as an example, Colorado has some questions whether there's more traffic accidents where marijuana is a contributing factor. I'm a lawyer that works in civil litigation. It's all car accidents, injury, and death. Well, if you sit in a living room of a family that just had their son or daughter killed in a car accident, they don't want to hear, you know, I like the freedom of recreational marijuana. They lost their son or daughter in an accident. They are looking for someone to blame, and if alcohol or drugs is involved, they're not very excited about legalizing it. I think the greatest answer I can give, we had a Veterans for Cannabis event last week, and the best answer I can give you is clearly coming. So, in my opinion, the wave of support is simply growing. You don't have to like that or not, but that's what we're seeing in the country. That's what people predicted 10 years ago, and that's what I'm hearing in my district and across the state. Is it here yet? Probably not, because we're not having these hearings on public safety and public health, too. I'm an advocate for doing everything possible to decrease teen cigarette smoking. It costs the taxpayers a fortune, makes people unhappy, people die of emphysema, all kinds of bad stuff. So I'm supporting recreational marijuana, but I don't want people to smoke cigarettes. And I think you have to resolve those through the democratic process and have some hearings. And I would vote for it, but I would still say, like a lot of things, it's not all just, oh yeah, for sure, this is a great move. There are costs to it, just like Medicare for all, which is a different topic, which we don't have time for. Are you good?
Yeah, so if we want to do a quick picture with you real quick, do you have time for that, or do you want to order pizza
I was
first?
the one who said, we'll put it on whatever the
Yeah.
is there
So-
social media this week? Or?
If everyone wants to go to this side of the room, because it'll be more space. If he can sit in the middle, and exec board will sit over. Okay, so, yeah. We'll just
Madam President, if you could get between the two. All right, now.
Sorry, everyone.
Everybody smile over here. David and myself.
1, 2, 3, shoot. 1, 2, 3, resign. Okay, we got it.
1, 2, and 3.
One more.
Oh, there's a camera over there.
Oh, we got enough shots, I guess.
Got him.
Wait, everyone. We got one more.
Different angles.
Okay, thank you.
You want to yell out loud?
Guys, we're gonna run downstairs real quick to the bus. We're gonna do let's shoot 2 minutes. Let's go. Yes.
Anissa. It's beyond.
To Dr. Lynn Akey's presentation on the Common Bell schedule, once she's ready.
Well, thank you for the invitation to come and speak with you today on the Common Bell and coordinated scheduling. An initiative that we've had underway for well over a year now, and we're finally moving towards some phases of implementation. And so happy to share some information with you and field some questions. To start at the top, you may be saying why Common Bell and course scheduling, particularly if you've not been following this conversation for the last year and a half. For us as an institution, going back actually to probably about 2015-16, we were consistently receiving information from our students that there were challenges in their ability to schedule full courses and to put their course schedules together in an effective and efficient manner, such that they could get to timely degree completion. And with our focus on student success, we're wanting to ensure that our students can enroll in the courses that you all need, when you need them, and to the best of our ability, ensuring that they're in high-quality spaces. And so a year and a half ago, we launched the Common Bell Course Scheduling and Room Scheduling Initiative. And we're looking at practices that we're going to adopt as an institution that better support student success, space utilization, as well as financial sustainability. When we think about Common Bell and coordinated scheduling and why now, there's a couple of pieces that come together to paint that picture. One I already mentioned, the focus on student success. And we've heard repeatedly from our students some challenges around course scheduling and making their schedules work in an efficient and effective manner. So we want to aid students in that process. We also need to move towards maximizing the utilization of our classroom spaces. And we know we're going to have some space constraints coming to us as a campus as we look at a future Armstrong Hall. When we demo our current Armstrong Hall and put up a new Armstrong Hall, the space that we will have will be less than what we have today. Which means if we're going to support the types of robust offerings we have today, we have to do it in a more coordinated and more compact fashion. So while the new Armstrong Hall is a few years away, it's not all that far away. So it really is critical that we get about doing this work. As we go into Common Bell and coordinated scheduling, we're moving into this project in two core phases. Phase one is the Common Bell course framework. That was the area where we focused on last year within the campus community and establishing a new structure, a pattern, if you will, for how our courses will be offered. The second phase, though, which is a core area of work for this year, is talking about how we recognize different types of academic space, how we actually then schedule that space in alignment with the courses that we're offering, and how do we maximize our offerings, ensuring that we're offering the right courses and enough of the right courses at the right times for the students who need them on their path to completion. So when we talk about this as two phases of work, last year we did all of our developmental work around the Common Bell course framework. We're moving that into implementation this year. So we're working with our departments and colleges right now to use a new common pattern of courses to plan their schedules, which they're doing right now, for fall of 2020. This year, in phase two, we'll be focusing on establishing new practices and procedures around space, room scheduling, and course offerings that will go into implementation next fall, which will impact the course schedule that will be released for fall of 2021. So it's a 2-year project of work, 2-year project of implementation, and a 2-year timeline in which students will start to see this play out within the course schedule. First wave in fall of 2020, and the second wave in fall of 2021. I'll hit a couple of highlights here around the Common Bell course framework, because that's the phase we're really focused on right now, and the first phase that you'll experience in fall of 2020. The Common Bell course framework focuses primarily on courses that are held in our general purpose and telepresence classrooms. And it's primarily focused on courses that are held here in our face-to-face offerings at our Mankato campus, as well as our other course locations. So our additional locations at a distance. Because we have students who, particularly like in those telepresence, need to be able to transact between different spaces. The Common Bell course framework is for classes that are not held in general purpose, are not constrained by it, but we are encouraging all of our departments to schedule the start of classes according to the framework. So if you're thinking about spaces like labs or clinics, right, we expect they will be on a slightly different schedule. Right? You can't set up and tear down and reset a lab in the same way you can a general purpose classroom. Right? So transition times, utilization rates are a little bit different. You can see here there's a standard course meeting framework in which we have 6 different patterns that courses may fall into. So it's still a fairly complex pattern, but we're a complex institution. And so when we start thinking about how courses may be offered, there's multiple different patterns to those offerings that cross the week. When you're thinking about those patterns, a lot of that depends on what type of course you're looking at. Here you'll see those different patterns that are represented as different standard type class periods. And so again, we've got 6 different, and you'll see that they all range from a 50-minute class period down to a 200-minute class period. So again, and these are typically going to be for your 1 credit to 5 credit courses. Further, and I know this is small, but you'll have access here to the whole proposal in a minute. Again, if you start thinking about 1 credit to 5 credit courses, and you put that together with the various different start times, you get multiple different possible patterns for courses. Again, I want to make sure that folks understand we're complex university with complex offerings. There are certainly other institutions out there that have a more simplistic approach. Right? You're either a Monday, Wednesday, Friday 50-minute course, or you're a Tuesday, Thursday 75-minute course. You can see here we have many other options and opportunities and patterns. And this came about through all of our conversations last year with our student representatives and our faculty and staff representatives, and thinking about the best way for us to serve students and to deliver our courses. I want to point out that the Common Bell course framework also has distribution requirements. So we've touched on the pattern aspect, but we're also asking our departments to ensure that they're evenly distributing how they're offering our courses. So distribution of meeting times over the course of a day, so to ensure that we're vertically distributing our courses for students to choose from. Also, I'm thinking about horizontally in distributing across meeting patterns Monday through Friday. And also in thinking about a distribution of enrollments. So that we can maximize the opportunities that students have to find a course and a section that will work for their schedule. We do have information that's publicly available on Common Bell and coordinated scheduling. So if you do go to our website, you can see the full proposal. You can see all of the meeting patterns that are out there. You'll see the visual blocks of time that our departments and faculty are working with now as they're constructing their schedules for fall 2020. So that's a high-level overview. Let me turn it over to you and see what questions you might have.
Yep. Are there any questions? Senator Toriwatha?
I see when you're coming into the meeting patterns, a lot of undergrad classes. Are you taking into perspective of graduate classes that are also held in Armstrong Hall?
Yes. So the Common Bell course framework applies to both undergraduate and graduate courses that are in a general purpose or telepresence classroom that have daytime demand. So when we talk about daytime demand, in general, you're talking about something that's happening between 8 a.m. and about 5 p.m. So yes, and that is critical. You know, that was a large conversation for the work group and thinking about that. But we recognize that we have some graduate programs, for example, that serve very specific populations, primarily evenings and weekends. They're kind of outside of the daytime demand hours. But we have other grad programs that are similar to our undergraduate as far as their meeting patterns, and we all have to be able to share the same physical space. And so hence it was necessary for those two to be brought together.
Are there any other, Senator Hoysath?
Did you take into account like specific majors that perhaps like only meet on certain days because then it allows them to fill like an internship requirement, and like is that going to be affected by that? Because like I know certain majors only will meet on Tuesdays and like Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then the other days they all have like jobs and work and things like that. Is that going to be affected by this, and how do we take that into account?
Sure. So first off, it's possible that all of our previous patterns or ways of doing things around course scheduling could be affected and could change. So that absolutely is a possibility. We do have allowance within the framework for a program or department to ask for an exception to a course. But again, that needs to be based on a legitimate programmatic need to serve those students, right? So we know we have some places where it's like that, where we've got students who are scheduled in blocks because again, they have to do field experiences at particular times because the field experience only operates at a particular time. So it necessitates that the course be offered at an alternative time. So there is a mechanism for that, but it's not automatic, and it will be vetted.
Great. Are there any other questions, Senator Rouse?
You said fall 2020 is when they're going to adopt this.
So the Common Bell framework, the pattern, is being adopted now, and it's being used now by all of our departments to schedule courses for fall 2020.
And our spring 2020 classes, are they posted already?
Yes.
Oh.
That schedule is already determined. Hopefully you received information today from the registrar's office telling you about upcoming registration information. So yeah, that schedule is already determined. Really, when we're setting our course schedule, we're a year in advance doing that work.
Senator Hoysath?
So there were some limitations over the summer of like incoming students coming in and having like limited courses or not being able to get into the general education requirements that they need to be able to graduate in 4 years and to get their degree on time. Is that going to be solved by this?
So that's part of the phase of work that is on the docket for this year.
Right.
So space, room scheduling, and course offerings. Right. And that's what you're talking about, is course offerings.
Cool. So those conversations are happening like right now?
Yes.
Are there any final questions? Any other questions? Oh, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming in today. And now we're going to move to Vice President Straka.
You need to go to wireless.
So actually, it was really interesting to have Senator Frentz here and get a little bit of background about the importance of higher education. And what I wanted to do here is to give you a little bit of a background of what's happened with tuition over the last 7 years. And really the primary time when we saw the major increases in tuition really related from about the year 2000 through about 2012. So there was that decade where we saw the funding in Minnesota for higher education switch for our institution from 1/3 tuition to 2/3 paid by the state of Minnesota, really to see that conversely. What you can see is in the last several years, there has been an effort by the state of Minnesota, by Senator Frentz and his colleagues, to try to address some of the affordability issue of tuition that kind of exploded in the 2000s and earlies. So if you look at the undergraduate tuition on the left-hand side here from FY13, which would be like the fall of fiscal year, the fall of 2012, there's 7 years, we were able to hold tuition level or freeze tuition for 4 of those 7 years. So if we look at the last 7 years, the average tuition increase per year is only 1.5%. That's significantly below the rate of inflation, so there is some progress being made, and certainly we understand the importance of affordability of tuition. Graduate education, I can tell you, at the legislative level, is still considered a public good, but probably the talks lean towards being a private good, that people can make an investment into a master's degree and then they'll get a return in that. So they've been a little bit more about, the legislature's been a little more hands-off looking at it. We did freeze tuition for graduate tuition and credits back in fiscal year 17, but you can see that's about a 3% average. Again, that's pretty close to what the CPI has been. It's fairly close to a level of inflation of what we've seen. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a background about where we've been. Any questions on what's been happening over the last 7 to 10 years in tuition? As you look at this, bring up any questions?
Are there any questions about tuition for Vice President Straka? Senator Rouse.
I'm wondering, has the President's Cabinet made any attempts to prevent further tuition increases in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
I'll get into that, and part of that has to do with the basic amount of funding. So what I can tell you is even within this, in times of period, this doesn't mean that the institution has been getting new money or has been getting staying even with the cost of inflation. We have inflation, just like the minimum wage is going up every year, and students will see your minimum wage and all the lowest wage for student help. January 1st will move up to $10. That things cost more every year. You guys have seen your rent go up, you're seeing food prices go up, and so forth. We've actually had to do 2 rounds of budget cuts during that period of 7 years. In order to hold the tuition to this level, we've not gotten the full cost of what our cost of living adjustments are as an institution, our inflation as an adjustment. So we're actually right now just finalizing $5 million worth of cuts that really address the structural budget gap for the last biennium. And we had another round of cuts 2 years prior to that. So even in times when you're saying, well, yes, we are making decisions of affordability, knowing that we've also had to make spending decisions and other kinds of decisions here to make spending reductions so that we can balance, still wanting to provide you all the services we can, all the education we can, but trying to balance that with affordability. And I would say maybe in the 2000s, that balance wasn't as there, and we turned to higher tuition rates. In fact, I believe in the early 2000s, there were back-to-back 15% tuition increase rates during that period. So as I go to something else now, I want to just take a look at the question you brought up. And this is a little small, and I apologize for that, but let's take a look. This column represents our funding and expense changes from last year to this year. And we did get about $2.4 million new dollars in appropriation from the state legislature. And that's a little under a 3% increase for us. And we looked at a tuition rate increase of 3% at the graduate, 3.9 at the 3% undergraduate, 3.9 at the graduate level, for a total revenue change of about $5.2 million. If we had stayed level of enrollments for last year, with an expenditure inflation of 3% on a $160 million budget, we would have had about $500,000. We would have brought in about $500,000 more than in new revenues than we expected our new expenses to be. We are looking like we're going to be down about 140 tuition-paying FYE. We're up in concurrent enrollment and some other things, so when you hear some reported FYE numbers, it may be a smaller loss than this, but when we look at what's the tuition-paying students, it's about $1 million loss. So I'm projecting for this year, we're going to have somewhere around a $500,000 structural deficit. But the real issue comes, what happens next year? We're only scheduled to get about $230,000 new dollars from the state legislature next year. And this is changing a historical pattern that's happened over the last few bienniums. The 2-year biennium, the state does their budgets on a 2-year cycle. Historically, if we were going to get $100 million as a system, we would get $33 million the first year, we would get $67 million the second year, and we would have a base appropriation moving forward of $67 million. What we have seen in the last 3 bienniums is a shift to getting maybe $100 million But in this biennium, we got 50 million in the first year, and we got that same 50 million in the second. Last biennium, when we talked about a $5 million deficit, we got, basically the way we got the money is we got 60 million in the first year and we got 40 million the next. We ended up about, that's not, the math isn't perfect, but we ended up with $12 million less flowing through our allocation formula. So last year, we actually got, in fiscal year 19, we had $1.2 million less in appropriation than we had the year before. So even if you offset that, then we had frozen tuition. So you can see that the only way to solve that is to cut spending, and we've been doing that. So as I look at this current year, the change over 2 years in column K, right now, a total increase in appropriation of about 2.6 million. If we do another 3% and 3.9% like we did this year, we would have garnered about $8 million in new revenue. We're expecting our inflation to be 9.6 million. And again, most of that is not under our local institutional control. Most of that inflation is collectively bargained. That is it's a fair process, and I think it's been a very good process for us. But we're not going to keep up with what our anticipated expenses are going to be. With, again, showing that I think we're going to be that 140 that we're not recover next year, but hope to have a level enrollment the next year. We would have about a $2 million deficit for our budget next year, and that is with a 3% increase at a 3.9 at the grad level. We're not here today to recommend exactly what our final increase is going to be. I just want to get you involved early on in the process so we can talk to you about what happened at the legislature last year, what are the impacts. Because we know, and the board heard clearly last June at the board hearing about the importance of affordability and the stories of the difficulty of rising tuition to you students. But we also are trying to balance that with the fiduciary responsibility of the institution to have a balanced budget and to try to give you the services and the instruction and all of the other assets that we give you and support that we give you in a broad-based support to help you succeed. So it really is a balance. So I really have to thank actually my friend Nick Frentz for talking about choices and talking about that balance. And we're really trying to provide that fiduciary balance here as we move forward as well. Again, this will be, as you can see, coming into this year for the last 7 years, 1.5% has been the average increase. The other thing I might add, we have seen increases to both the state grant and Pell Grant over that time. And there have been years where the net impact on the most needy students was actually that they paid less, that there was a net decrease in the amount owed after aid is applied. So with that, I think I'll open it up to any further questions.
Are there any further questions, Senator Mankato?
So, Vice President Straka.
Yes.
I have a question about the inflation. So where is this necessarily coming from? Is it because of increasing salaries or increasing expenses?
That's our primary source of inflation, yes, is salaries and so forth. There's other places that we have inflation as well. A big chunk in not just salaries, but healthcare costs. Anywhere you go, if you were paying for healthcare, that's one of the benefits we provide to our employees. We're looking at 9.5% increases each year in the health insurance costs that we provide our employees. So that's 1% of compensation just for health insurance. And then there are other costs that we have that are going up. Software costs are definitely going up. We're having to make difficult choices all the time about what software pack licenses can we keep, trying to negotiate where we can, looking at campus-wide versus department licenses and so forth. But it's difficult. We're seeing some significant increases in software prices would be one of the areas of non-salary inflation. Collections, I think the CPI for library collections is somewhere around 6 to 7% a year, as opposed to the general public CPI of around 2.5 to 3%. So there's pressures all across the budget, and where we look at where we know we have some inflationary increases. It's an excellent question, I think.
Senator Hoysett.
Thank you so much for coming and engaging us with this conversation. And also, I think a lot of us don't really know what it looks like to budget for a massive institution that, we love going to. So thank you so much for all the hard work and coming and meeting with us. If there's a senator who's here at the table who's really passionate about budgeting and really passionate about affordable tuition, what is a way that we can get involved with either your office or someone who's maybe more accessible to students so that we can be included in this conversation even more or even know more about it?
Well, clearly your statewide organization is very involved, and so getting involved with Students United is a place where your voice is heard. That's the official place to student government here is the official voice to our administration, and Students United is the official voice to the Board of Trustees at that level. I would also say, as Senator Francis said, get involved, and you can lobby, you can call, you can email, you can do those things about affordability to see what we might be able to do to increase our funding. I don't want to downplay what, again, over the last 7 years that with help with the legislature, they've been able to help really stop or not completely stop, but limit the increases, inflationary increases of tuition over the last part of the decade. So I think that's really important to recognize that that's been done. But the other thing we can do is more of a learning experience if people want to. There's a group of new senators that might want to learn a little bit more about our budget. I do have some presentations I've done in the past. Be welcome to do it again and provide a basic kind of budget primer lesson and a little bit about the different colors of money at the university and how complicated it is to budget here. I always balance trying to give you enough information that it's useful while still being able to not make it so simple that I insult your intelligence. So it's a difficult balance about exactly how much information I can try to get, but I'll be happy to do that as well.
Thank you so much.
Again, the students, I would say too, those students who are at budget submeet and confer, and your appointees, make sure that you are showing up at those meetings and bringing the voice of the students and listening and making sure that we talk about these issues at the student government meet and confer once a month as well. Those are all places that we can have those kinds of discussions.
Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, we will be inviting you back. Thank you. Awesome. So with that, we'll be moving into open forum. Is there anyone? Todd.
Good afternoon. Todd Fingston from Campus Recreation. First off, on the bottom of your agenda under announcements, make sure you RSVP for trivia, right? It's coming up on November 13th, I believe. So that should be fun. I think there's some student affairs people that have already RSVP'd, and I know you're RSVP'ing for Amber, so. When I presented on September 18th about the sports dome, I think some of the things were as clear as mud at that time. So Vice President Straka and I met with President Omar and Vice President Trini a week ago yesterday, and we decided that it might be a good idea for, after that conversation, to update you again on a few things. I know we've got a quick drone footage update from Monday on the field. I think Sam is going to share that. In the meantime, we'll talk. Couple things. We had a couple snafus. Number one, at the building, the support building, they had to replace 14 of the 31 precast panels, the walls of the facility. That's done. So now they're going to move forward with roof and things like that, hopefully in the next week or so. They also started to install the turf 180 degrees in the wrong way. And that happened a week ago Monday, so they corrected that, and they're continuing to move forward. If you'll see on the aerial, on the digital, the drone footage here, that you'll see some lines on there, different colors of lines for different sports. There's some soccer, lacrosse, football, softball, those types of things. So we're excited about that. But Sam's going to pull something up here a little bit just to talk about the scheduling model. Again, it's going to be a shared space. Athletics will have time. Campus recreation will have some time. When I say campus recreation, that means sport clubs, intramurals, but it also means student groups that's scheduled through us. You're going to see on the diagram that there's a lot of blanks in that area. That would be rental opportunities for the general public. And on weekends, that might be rental opportunities for athletics to host camps and clinics. Also, potential rental opportunities for campus rec sport clubs like lacrosse, if they want to have a half to a full day tournament, to get that internal rental rate to rent the facility. It also could mean a student group, an RSO, might want to rent the facility for a big event that they're having. And we talked about the other day, it could be a 3 to 4 hour window or longer. It's going to be situational. We're going to have to draft some type of document that talks about that. Hey, when might the students be charged to use the facility? When is it going to be free because I'm just in there for a couple hours for an event, a practice, Korean Student Soccer Association? Yeah, that would be free. But when we talk about some of the weekend things, when it's longer and there's setup time and tear down time, that there might be an internal rental rate. And that applies to, when we say students, I say student athletes, student athletics, we say campus rec sport clubs, we say the general student. That's what we mean when we say students, and there could be a rental charge for all of our students on some of those longer events on weekends.
So as we built the budget and the operating budget, again, to remind you how the funding for the dome was done. There's $2 million of taxable revenue bonds, and the student $10 fee is to pay the debt service on that $2 million. The general fund brought forward over $3.5 million. We also received a gift from Shields Foundation to give us $500,000 in support of this. But we're really built an operating budget where the rental income would pay for the annual operating expenses. It would pay to put the dome up, take it down, to pay for utilities, to pay for some staffing, and to pay for those things. So there is an amount that we built in of how many hours a day we need to rent the facility in order for it to cash flow itself. That averages out to about 12 hours a day we need to have across the fields, not 12 hours the whole facility, but 12 field hours a day that we want to do that. The prime time that we're really going to be looking at is about 6 o'clock until about 10 o'clock at night, maybe 11 o'clock at night, and then on weekends are going to be prime time. So those, just so you're understanding why do we need to do that. If we take it offline for an entire weekend for, say, a wiffle ball tournament that's a student, so I don't point out anybody in particular. But if we took it off for a wiffle ball tournament all weekend, that means we're not making any rental income at all, and there are those operating expenses. So it is a balance. When we looked at it overall, we hoped that we would see somewhere in a really rough estimate, approximately a third to athletics, a third to the students through campus recreation, campus intramurals, and campus open time, and about a third to the general public.
Want to key up a little drone footage? We have the fights on here too, but I don't know if that quality is going to be there. So this was just taken on Monday. We had a nice, bright, sunny day with not a lot of wind. So you can see there's some lines as well. We've got some orange and yellow and purple and gray and white for the different sports that are going to be in there. If you want, I can do this almost every week or every other week, just a 30-second snippet of this. We can fly the drone because it's going to change weekly now. You'll see a roof going on the structure hopefully in the next week or so on that support building, that 4,400 square foot support building with restrooms and some storage, things like that. But anything else? Vice President Jones is here as well, and I know that our leadership met with Vice President Jones about this issue after I presented too. So just want to make it more clear what's going on. I want to be seamless and transparent here. I'm not hiding anything.
Any rain delays?
Initially is why we had some. We're moving forward. In fact, they've made up some of those days. And now with a couple of these snafus, we've said, we might be behind a week or two. And when I went to the Sports Dome Progress meeting today, they pulled it back and said, you know what, we're hoping maybe December 6th. Friday, December 6th, we might be done with substantial completion. But we know, you look at the weather, they haven't got a roof on that building yet. And every day they can't put a roof on it puts us back probably a day. And we got some weather coming in potentially in the next few days again. So we're fighting against the weather with this project. We're hoping in a week or so, if we can get that building dry, meaning the roof on it, windows in, that we can keep making progress.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Hi. So I've kind of been trying to be the liaison between you and the athletic coaches, and there's some initial questions that they had. So what exactly is prime time for the weekdays again?
After 3,
Okay.
but we know athletics is going to
Yeah.
use the facility till 5.
Okay.
But
so,
after 3, let's say you're not practicing on a certain day because we're on break, winter break, and school is done at 3 o'clock for the high schools. So what if they can come in then at 3 o'clock, but we would need to charge them a prime time rate?
Okay. So I think a generic question that the coaches that I talked to would be, would the prime time interfere with the availability of the fields from 1 to 5 for those practice times?
No.
No. Okay.
Absolutely not.
We consider the prime time after the time it's a
Okay.
good attack.
Okay.
That's a block of time.
But if they're not using it, if there's somebody not using it and we can rent it, we'll rent it.
Yeah.
No, during let's say winter break.
Yeah.
You're not here. We rent it up for free.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you.
Perfect.
Senator Watha?
Once the dome goes up, is it up all year round, or does it come down in the summer?
It's seasonal. It can only be up for 6 months, or usable for 6 months. So right now, we talk about this year, we might use it from mid-December till about June, that we could have it up. But normally, probably November 1st to May 1st, October 15th to April 15th, trying to figure out that window. We think, football, soccer could be playing late fall, but yet then we have baseball, softball later in the spring. We're trying to figure that out.
So then in the summertime, what does it kind of look like?
Oh, it's an outdoor,
Yeah, well, just be
unlit
open
field that can be used.
Okay.
So when the dome is taken down, it's stored in part of the building that's out there. We'll actually store all of the material that creates the dome.
Fabric, lights, nets, everything.
It's state building code that requires anything that's up more than 6 months, a dome that's up more than that would require a significantly higher capital investment in fire suppression and other systems. And so there's very different building codes and requirements for seasonal domes at 6 months and less, and structures that are up for more than 6 months.
Rick, help me out here, but the $5.5 million seasonal dome that we put up and take down, if we put a permanent roof on that, we're talking double.
Probably close to double.
Yeah.
Close to double.
Well, are there any other questions? Senator Moore.
So we know that the roof is collapsible currently. Would there be any point in the future where you would go to a full-time sports dome?
Really would require completely different facility structures and so forth. So it wouldn't convert. It's not like we could take this and easily convert, the existing field to that. It's a difficult question, but it would be very expensive.
Okay.
Cool. Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you guys for coming. Cool. Is there anyone else here for open forum? Senator Weinzierl.
Hi, everyone. I mostly just want to really quickly give a quick presentation regarding Maverick Adventures. We have a pilot program coming up, and Elliot couldn't make it. He's getting married. So I'm just going to be representing him for the next couple of weeks, so hang tight. But we have a free skills clinic coming up. It's on October 25th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. I have flyers. I'm going to hand them around. You'll see on there is a QR code. Go ahead. I give you permission to take out your phone quickly to snap a picture. Write down that link on there or something. I'll pass those around. Just get them in the back of your mind so that you can address it. Let other people know. We anticipate we only have about 20 spots available. We definitely anticipate that's going to fill up. So we definitely encourage you to look at that, go over it. If you have any questions, you can either ask me afterwards, or I'm open to questions right now as well.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions? I have one. Are you guys going to be doing the outdoor cooking event like you did last year? Just
Yes.
an idea for the future?
That's with this event.
It's my favorite.
This is an outdoor clinic that is mostly regarding building a campfire as well as cooking as well. So there will be cooking. I believe at this moment we are planning on doing marshmallows.
Awesome.
So bare minimum, we'll be doing marshmallows for this event.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Food as well.
Some food. There was talk about ramen, but I'll let you know probably next week if there's any advances on that.
Cool, thank you. Are there any questions? Senator Rouse?
How does the QR code work?
So
With your camera?
you
Snapchat.
can scan it with Snapchat, monophones, we'll do it as well.
It just takes you to the registration.
Cool. Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone else here for open forum? Anyone else for open forum? Last call. Seeing none, we'll now move into the approval of the consent agenda. One change is that the diversity committee won't be able to present. The coordinator has class at 5, so next week we'll be putting them under presentation, so we'll get that done.
Give us a handout.
Oh yeah, and there's a handout for it. I'll go over that a little bit more in my officer report. Is there any dissent to the consent agenda? Any dissent? Any dissent? Seeing none, the consent agenda is passed. With that, we'll move into officer reports. President Omar.
I have a really short officer report. I was recently contacted by Karen Anderson, who is the Assistant Director of Community Engagement. She's looking for 2 student government representatives, specifically those of you who have shown interest in being a part of Student Basic Needs Committee. There will be a summit happening called the Campus Summit, Student Ready Campus Summit. It's on October 25th. So if any student government representative is interested in going, I know Senator Chiwatha is headed there. There will be a cost to kind of fit the traveling and stuff, so it is going to be $37.50. It's on October 25th. I'm not sure what time.
It's 8 a.m. to 5-ish. I have a vehicle. I have 2 extra spots in that vehicle to take.
Okay, perfect. So if you guys are interested, you guys can contact me as well as Senator Chiwatha. Again, there's going to be a charge of $37.50. Karen talked to me and mentioned that if you cannot pay the bill right now, you can reimburse her for the charge at a later date, and she would cover the $37.50 charge. Lastly, the hockey game has been moved from November 1st to Saturday, October 19th. It starts at 6 p.m. So if you've already emailed and kind of RSVP for the November 1st one and you're interested in going to the one happening next weekend, Saturday, October 19th, you would have to email Amber again to grab those tickets once more. There's going to be 10 tickets, so you can just email her and she'll get the tickets ready to go. It starts at 6 p.m. Saturday, October 19th. And with that, I yield. Oh, also a quick update with, with the fall conference happening with Students United fall delegates. During our board meeting this weekend, I have found out that it will be held at Winona. They're going to host us in their dorms. And so instead of staying in a hotel, we're going to stay at their dorms for the fall conference. Yeah. No. And with that, I yield.
Are there any questions? Any questions? Senator Spursel.
So is the hockey game on October 19th separate than what President Davenport was talking about with the 2 dates?
No, that's one of the 2 dates.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to?
I'll have to get some more clarifications. This morning he contacted me saying he wanted to make the change to give you the offer of the 19th, so I will follow up with his office and find out about the second game details. I wasn't aware he was going to make that comment here today, so I'll find out if the second game is the game that it was previous or if it's a different second game. So sorry about that.
Are there any other questions? Do you have something else?
First come, first serve. Same with the last. So if you booked one for November 1st, don't think you're good to go for the October 19th one. You have to rebook it with Amber again.
Any questions? Yep, Senator.
So are we RSVPing again? Like if we did this November 1, re-RSVP.
Start all over. Yeah. And we're going to be in the president's suite with that.
Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, Vice President Trenny.
I don't have much. I don't know where my roster sheet is. Is it over there? Can you keep passing that around? So whoever didn't write their time down, their 1 hour, and their location, please do so. You need both. You can't just say 1 to 2, 1 to 2 where. So please pass that around. The new senators, take a moment. Just think of 1 hour you need to be available and fill that out because it does get uploaded on our website. And that's all I really had. Is there any questions about that?
Any questions? Any questions?
That's the one consistent hour.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into my officer report. I have a couple things. First of all, office hours are due by tomorrow at noon. Make sure you get those submitted on Engage. They're 6 hours. If you guys have questions about the form, about what counts, let me know. But tomorrow at noon, make sure those are turned in. Senator reports, I included in the email I sent out with the agenda this week who needs to still sign up for one more senator report. We don't have anyone that needs to sign up for 2 anymore. Good job. But there's still a large amount of people that need to sign up for their second senator report, or for some new senators, their first. So make sure you email me a date that you want to go on, and I'll let you know if that works or not. So if you could send me like 2 dates, that'd be great. And I'll just kind of tell you which one works best. Is the Dean of the Day here with us today?
Yes.
Is it Chris Corley? Okay, I thought so. So yeah, our Dean of the Day is Chris Corley. Do you just want to introduce yourself? Sure.
Hi, thanks for having me today. It's kind of an honor to be here. I've had a lot of you in the classrooms. In my classroom here on campus, or in my classroom in Paris, for example. I'm an historian here at Minnesota State. I was the honors director for 6 years, and now I'm the interim dean of the library and learning. And it's been a really interesting time working with the librarians. I've always thought that they were great people, but I think you probably know as well as I do the kind of services that the library offers you as you're developing your information management needs and trying to find sources for your projects to help solve problems, those types of things. The library has the materials that you need, hopefully, or can get it relatively quickly. The library has the spaces that you need to be able to study, collaborate with your colleagues in your classrooms, and the library has the people that you need to help you sift through that kind of stuff, and that's what we really pride ourselves on. The library is going to be going through some changes in the next few years related to what Lynn Akey had discussed there with the Armstrong renovation. There's going to be a need for space in the library building itself to accommodate the loss of space in Armstrong. And so our librarians are working really hard right now to be able to plan for that down the road. And what we're doing is we're developing a kind of visioning process of what we hope our library would look like and what kind of services it would be able to provide in the next 10, 15, or 20 years. And we're going to be producing a document at the end of the semester that's going to try to articulate that. And that document's going to have student input. We're already reaching out to various student organizations. If you would like me to engage student government, I'm happy to ask the librarians to engage you specifically in that regard, but it's pretty exciting to kind of think about the challenges we have, but also the opportunities we have as an institution regarding the library. And I know I've been in personal discussion with several of you about textbook affordability, which is a huge issue for you and for all of us down the road. And just know that we're willing to partner with you. We've talked to you guys specifically about ways that we can enhance the Maverick textbook program and enhance services associated with that so that we have more and more faculty participating in it. And we're looking forward to being partners with you there. But our librarians are also really active in what we call OER, or Open Educational Resources Movement, with the idea that they're partnering with our other faculty throughout the university to help the faculty find resources that we already have and to be able to package them in a way that they can complement textbooks, or in some cases substitute for textbooks that you pay a lot of money for. And so we're working really hard to advance those issues also.
Awesome.
Are there any questions that you might have?
Are there any questions, Vice President Trunny?
Can I just say, after meeting with you several times and talking to you, I thank you so much for being student-focused and friendly. So, I just want to say that.
Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here with us today. 2 more quick things. So since the Diversity Committee, as mentioned, there's a handout. Make sure you look it over. I'm going to put them under presentations next week so like it actually happens. Sorry about that. And then also, if you guys look under announcements, the trivia is listed. I am planning on under announcements putting student government events, so like our women empowerment event, just like the date, time, and location under announcements, just so then we all know when student government specific events are and we have it on a piece of paper. So if you have those events, could you please email me so I make sure they get on the next agenda? So shoot me an email if you have one of those events that have been planned under student government's name. With that, are there any questions for me? Any questions? Cool. Also, we have a lot of RSOs coming to future meetings, so it's going to be a fun time. With that, we will move into Senator reports, the Student Affairs Committee.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I would like to say, stop it. I would like to say, excuse me, I need to go very fast here. Thank you to everyone who voted last week. I did win homecoming royalty, so that was very fun. You had a lot of awesome presentations, but they got really long. So here's what's happening in Student Affairs Committee. Obviously, Andrew's doing amazing stuff with Maverick Gaming under Campus Rec. That happened. We talked about that. There's been off-casting. We're having that off-campus housing presentation. Make sure to look forward to that. Mental health awareness has been tabling for the last 2 days, so huge shout out to the senators who are participating in that. We want to continue to make mental health a priority. 95 people have completed the surveys about orientation, so we're getting feedback to the new Student Affairs Programs Office. The Women's Leadership Panel will be on October 21st, next Monday, and we're also trying to help fix some signing and lighting issues within the community. So lots of amazing stuff happening in Student Affairs Committee. You should get in on it if you're not, and that's it. We're amazing.
Awesome. Are there any questions? Any questions? Sina, thank you. Senator Brandmeier?
That's how we do it.
Okay, hi everyone. I'll try and make this short also. So since I'm a pretty new senator, I actually have just picked my project, which I'll talk about pretty briefly, and then I'll just detail a meeting with the grad studies team that Senator Cherry and I had this week. So I decided that my personal project is going to be kind of trying to apparently there was a grad studies coalition a couple years ago, so I'm going to be working on trying to revive that / start a new graduate studies student organization, mostly because I feel and other grad students such as Senator Terry feel like there's a lack of community among grad students. It's way harder in grad school to meet people than it is in undergrad, just because most of us come to campus for our classes and then we just leave. So we really want to try and create like a good sense of community and another support system just for grad students who might be going through the same thing, looking for another peer system to have on campus. So I'll be focusing on that this semester. Along with Senator Cherry. We did meet with the Dean of Grad Studies on Monday, and we basically just talked about getting this up and running. And tomorrow, Senator Cherry and I have a meeting with a rep from the CDC to talk about a possible event. We want to have a panel for people who are considering grad school. This is around the time people start considering it and actually sending in applications, since application deadlines, I think, start like early December. So we kind of want to have a panel for people who might be interested in learning more about like the application process and having some grad students on that panel just for them to ask questions for. Probably I and Senator Terry will be on that panel, and any other grad students who feel like they could answer those questions. So we just want to answer questions like taking the GRE, applying to schools like around the country, and kind of balancing like the application process and then also undergrad work. That's all I have.
Awesome. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, Senator Johnson.
I'm also going to try to make this short. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paige Johnson. I'm one of the senators for the College of Arts and Humanities. Unfortunately, I had to drop one of my projects because I asked around about it, and it turns out it wasn't as popular as I thought it was going to be. So I dropped one of them, but the one that I'm currently working on is a parking pass for both the dancers and the technicians in theater and dance department. As many of you know, we're not allowed to park in the Gold until 6:30 p.m., but for a lot of us, our tech time starts at 6. Therefore, we have to either risk a ticket, try to get a ride, or hope you get out of tech by the time before the buses end. So creating a temporary parking pass just for the people who sign up would be really beneficial. I have emailed Dr. Hustles, who's the chair of Theater and Dance. He recommended me to David Callan, so be expecting an email from me shortly.
I'm breathless.
Yes, so I have been doing a little bit of research on that. So I've been monitoring the PA Gold Lot, and there's only an average of 40 cars there at 6 o'clock. So I'm hoping that this goes very well. Another thing I've been working on in academic affairs with many of my constituents have been helping to plan the U-League workshop. And also today we started brainstorming ideas to help celebrate students, particularly those who get on the Dean's List, and so we're working on that. As mentioned earlier, we have to have some fun. So I would like to end my report by saying I am getting a puppy. Has nothing to do with anything, but whatever. I'm overwhelmed. It's great. Any questions for me?
Any questions? Any questions, Senator Rouse?
What kind of puppy is it?
See me after I do too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we still have an election, so we need to make sure we're getting through things quick. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Senators Batari and Patel.
Okay, so this is Senator. So in our report is pretty small, and then what we were tracking is we got some emails from students about some problem about the labs and then about the classes and all. So we meet with the Dan's, we meet our dean. Yeah. We meet with our dean, Laura, and talk about those. And about the courses offered, what we figure out is there are some courses which are not offered every semester. So what is the reason behind that is there are less number of students for that courses. Because of that, they can't. They don't want to hire. They don't want to hire a professor just to teach like 5 students. So one reason for that is the less number of students trying to enroll in that. So what we found a way to get rid of it is if there are a group of students who are trying to get in the class and then they request, then that might be done for them. The classes might be offered, but they must be between 10 to 15 students. And after that, we talk about the tutoring to make it for every day. And there is also a problem about that is most of the senior students who does the tutoring are busy with their classes and the final projects and all. So they are not willing to do the tutoring. So for that, we talk, and then she talked with the chairs, and then we came to know that they are hiring more people for that. So, and then,
I can start with something. A few weeks ago, our President Omar, he got an email from a student talking about the software installation like MATLAB and Simulink for the students in engineering. So we talked about that to our dean, and we researched about that software as well. So we have come to a conclusion that these softwares are free for all the MSU students, and it's inside the MSU website, so many of the students don't know about it. So we're meeting Vice President of the IT Solutions, Mark, and Assistant CIO, Matthew Clay, to talk about the efficient way of installation in the library so that they can work after 10, even after the academic buildings are closed. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow, and I think the installation process will be pretty slow.
Are there any questions? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you guys. Senator Schumacher.
Hi everyone. I kind of have 2 things to go over. Senator Rouse and I met with our dean last week. One of the things we talked about was advising in SPS, particularly career advising. So we'll be focusing on that upcoming. We also talked about MapLife. So one of the things I'm working on is the college pages on MapLight and turning them into walls. So basically by turning into a wall feature allows students to join the groups and then they can post on there for asking for homework, help, study groups, things like that, try to get them the help that they need. So far, 2 of the colleges have that feature, Arts and Humanities and SBS. So we're still working on trying to get the colleges to switch over from that. We're in contact with the communications directors for each colleges, as well as adding events and other resources to those college pages. College of Allied Health and Nursing doesn't have a page yet, while the other colleges do, and so we're just kind of updating that. With that, I yield.
Are there any questions? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Seeing that there's no old business, is there any motions for new business? Any motions? Any motions? Seeing none, we'll move into our vacancy election for off-campus centers. Are candidates present? If you just want to head to the front of the room. Okay. So you're going to start out with a 2-minute opening statement, then you're going to stand for questions, and then you'll have a 1-minute closing statement. So you can start when you're ready.
Well, I am super excited to be here. I really thank you guys for having me today. My name is Rihanna Stiff, and I am a second-year student studying political science here at MSU. I would like to start by saying I would just like to tell you guys why I feel like I'm qualified for this position and why I desire it. So, to start, I found out about student government last year during my first year here at MSU. I was so intrigued by some of the things you guys do and legislate and push for that I knew I really want to be a part of it. Due to some family circumstances and an illness within my family, I decided to wait until I could be fully committed and just throw myself into this position. Now I feel as though I'm in that space where I can be committed to student government and to the student body and my position. So with that being said, as an off-campus senator, I would like to push for things for off-campus students. I see a lot of problems transitioning from being on campus last year to being off campus this year. It's very easy to see the sharp disparities within those things. This actually wouldn't be my first time legislating for people other than myself. My senior year in high school, I actually took on a similar year-long project where I pushed for a change in our school constitution and handbook, and that resulted in the actual change, and we banned all types of e-cigarettes, including vape, from our school grounds. Since then, I have been a part of BSU, Pre-Law Society, Student Ambassadors, and then most recently, I've been volunteering for the Greater Mankato Diversity Council.
Awesome. Thank you. So now she's going to stand for questions. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Any questions? Senator Chihuahua.
What do you think are some of the major needs to be met for off-campus students?
The first thing I would like to push for is, we talked a little bit about where the money would come from for any type of push we would like to see here at MSU. So I'd like to push for a decrease in parking permits. So some of you may have cars, some of you may not, but I think after moving in as an off-campus student to your apartment, buying utilities, buying different things you need, buying furniture, and then coming to school and having to pay for your bill, your tuition, and then after that, still having to pay for books, a parking permit that's $200 just sometimes isn't in the budget. So I would like to see a decrease in prices for that. There might be someone here already working on that because I know that might be like a popular issue. But besides that, I would also like to see increased bus routes on the weekends. So on Saturday, I believe there's only Route 33 that runs 6 to 11 p.m. at night, and that presents a problem if you don't have a car and you're busy during the week, you have organizations, you have other clubs, and you would like to handle business on a Saturday. You can't do it at 6 at night until where a lot of places are closed. Besides that, there's Route 23, I believe, on Sundays that runs in the morning time, but it has more limited stops than Route 33. And the last thing I could see myself pushing for is the MSU pushing for accountability on the behalf of University-affiliated apartment complexes. So just by a show of hands, how many of you guys live off campus? A lot. Okay, so personally, I feel as though when you're applying for an apartment, they'll point you to the direction of their very polished website, and then they'll give you a tour of a very polished unit, and then when you move in, you're like, this is a little different from what I saw. I talked to a few students, and one of them, I'm not gonna name a specific complex, one of them said they moved in and their floor was sticky, the carpet was sticky, and their dishwasher was broke. Another student, I went to a friend's house at the same apartment complex, and I walked in and his carpet was black. And you moved in the same day as me a week ago. There's no way you did this with your feet. And so I just think I would like to see a little bit of pressure from MSU on these apartment complexes stating, like, we're going to include your endorsements or sponsorships, or you're going to have your name anywhere affiliated with our university. You need to be accountable to the students and do what you're saying you're going to do on your websites or in your leases.
Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, you can now move into your 1-minute closing statement.
Some of my earlier points, I'm standing in front of you guys because I know I can do this position requires, and I feel like I can do it well. There's no doubt in my mind about that, and if I did have doubts, I wouldn't be here. I've done my research. I've asked a few other senators. I've asked Ms. V about her position and just about student government in general, and just to make sure that I would be a good fit for this position as well. I've asked past President Abdul about student government overall. I love him, and he gave me some good advice. And then I've also asked a few off-campus students as well what their experience is like and what they would like to see change. Besides that, I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about MSU, but I can say I'm willing to learn anything about MSU to do this role effectively. And if I'm not chosen today, this won't be the last time you guys see me. I'll be in upcoming elections, and if that one doesn't work out, the one after that. Get used to seeing me either sitting with you guys every Wednesday or in upcoming elections bugging with you guys as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So do you just want to take a step?
Oh yeah, David's gonna cry.
So we have, awesome, thank you. We have had an election today, so if you would like to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ariana Stiff,
Will represent and serve
will represent and serve
the students of Minnesota State University,
the students of Minnesota State University,
Mankato,
Mankato,
in student life
and
academic needs,
and
and will uphold the mission,
mission,
Constitution and bylaws
Constitution and bylaws
of the student government. I so affirm. Awesome. Congratulations. And you can grab a seat if there is one. So, is there a seat around the table? Okay. Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Luxurious.
So, with that, we will move into announcements. Are there any announcements? President Omar, yikes.
For the newly elected senator, hi Senator Stiff, if you don't mind seeing me after the meeting, so I can give you a rundown.
Awesome. Are there any other announcements? Vice President Trenny?
I was going to say this in my officer report, but please make sure you're keeping these. We don't print more. Just saying. Some people already forgot them. I lost them.
Okay, Sarah Schmidt?
Hi, theater again. This week opens up Arts Night at Old Place, which is a play being performed by our theater system. It's a comedy, and Paige is actually part of the crew. So it opens Thursday. Go see it this weekend if you're here. Yeah.
Awesome. President Omar?
Lastly, if you guys look at the announcements, it says look at the announcements. We do have trivia coming up November 13th. On that meeting, there will be no senator report. It's going to be a short meeting, so right after our meeting concludes, we'll go down to the jar and compete against student affairs and win, obviously. So November 13th, mark that on your calendar.
Okay, Senator Nellis?
Soccer has 2 home games. This is kind of redundant. On Friday at 3 p.m. we play Southwest Minnesota State. And then on Sunday we play Sioux Falls at 1.
Senator Bodko?
I was going to ask about the projects, the paper with all these projects on them, but I guess I'm just going to discuss it with President.
Next week.
Next week?
Okay. Senator Shabata?
Some of you may know I work for the CEO Community Engagement Office, so I deal with all the volunteer opportunities for students. I do put out a bi-weekly newsletter that lists whole bunch of volunteer opportunities. If you guys are interested in being subscribed to that so you can get other people volunteer hours if they need them, please contact me.
Awesome. John?
Reminder, please, we are requesting pre-registration for the ULEAG conference, so the event page is on you, Engage. Please sign up. I know you signed up, Janet. I saw that today. So, but we are basing our pre-order on pre-registration. So please sign up if you're going to be at the event. Again, it's Tuesday, October 22nd, from 5 to roughly 8:30 p.m. It's going to be a pretty fancy venue, but the people who sign up at the time will be the ones who go through the blind first. First Housing Fair is going to be November 5th. For those who have concerns about off-campus housing, feel free to visit with me. I tend to know both of the property managers and have had long-standing relationships with them. On the note, I've been working with Senator Sneha. Where is she? She's not here? Okay. And Senator Khalid on off-campus housing survey that's going to kill multiple birds with one stone. So there will be some basic needs questions there, some off-campus housing questions, some concerns, some basic data questions. The survey looks good to go. We at this point are just simply waiting for information and assistance on the distribution of that to off-campus students, and then it should be good to go. So once we're ready to get that out, I'll be providing some gift cards for students as incentives to participate, drawing up for one of 4 $25 gift cards. So please encourage students to participate in the survey.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Senator Cherry?
Where did the sign-up sheet go for the one that's a start?
See me after.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any other announcements? Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move into roll call again. Senator Biggs? Present. Senator Calderon-Pitchford? Here. Senator McDavid? Here. Senator Schmidt? Here. Senator Johnson? Here. Senator Mohammed? Senator Shakumbi? Senator Soliman? Here. Senator Brandmeier? Senator Cherry? Here. Senator Moore? Here. Senator Batari? Senator Patel? Here. Senator Schumacher? Here. Senator Rouse? Here. Senator Maltari? Senator Sriwatha? Here. Senator Stitt? Here. Senator Weinzierl? Here. Senator Soma? Here. Senator Bana? Senator Bashal? Senator Cook? Here. Senator Nellis? Here. Senator Karki? Here. Senator Plum? Here. Senator Hoysett? Here. Senator Batka? Present. Senator Spursel? Here. Senator Dickey? Hello. President Omer? Vice President Trenny. Have a nice day, you guys. This meeting is adjourned at 5:56. Save her! What's up? Good job!
Yeah, they'll just get better.